shit! Phew. Must have been a wrong number. Yo, what is up guys, this is Tyrannic Swine here and welcome to another game review. This time I am reviewing Outlast 2, the first-person survival horror that is the sequel to the first Outlast game that was developed by Red Barrel Studios. And the story begins with Blake Langerman and his wife traveling to the deserts of Arizona to find out this mysterious murder of a woman named Jane Doe who was apparently pregnant as well. And they end up getting into a crash in their helicopter and then both of them get separated. So Blake has to find Lynn amongst a group of incredibly crazy and insane people. And a lot of weird stuff happens in between. Now the story for Outlast 2 is not as good as the first Outlast. Definitely not. The second Outlast is pretty confusing and does not make a lot of sense at all. And the ending completely sucks ass too. Cause this is the thing. The first Outlast was at least like understandable. That's basically an insane asylum that was used as an experimental place so that they could like augment humans or something, so they could use supernatural abilities of sorts. This one is like about the coming of the the devil's baby or some shit. It made no sense. As the game goes back and forth between the real world and Blake's elementary school memories, as he has these flashbacks of another woman, another girl he knew called Jessica, and how she was murdered or something. So yeah, the game skips between the real world, which is the whole insane religious cult people, and then it switches to the school at some times, and it does swap between the two more and more as you progress through the game. But yeah, story makes and the thing is, there's not really any connection between these two worlds either, which is really annoying as well. If you're gonna be going between two different worlds, one that's real or fake, or probably both real, but who the hell knows, at least have a connection. There was no connection at all between the two. It just felt like some random crap that happened. And it just didn't make any sense. The story didn't make any sense. Yes, there's recordings and documents and stuff around, but that doesn't help much. And if that's the only thing to help you out with the story, then you have completely messed that up. I mean, yeah, it's just not as gripping as the first Outlast game. That was actually interesting. You kind of want to know what the hell's going on there, even though you should be getting the fuck out of there. This just doesn't make any sense, and it's it just completely throws you off. And it doesn't help with the way the game works as well. Outlast 2 is much more linear than the first Outlast, as you basically run and gun most of the time. There are very few points in the game where you actually hide. I probably only hid from the enemy 4 or 5 times, and this game is actually longer than the first one too. Apparently it took me 12 hours, or 13, but I think it's a lot less than that. Probably 8, 9 hours maybe, depending on the difficulty and depending on how many times you die, because this game is a lot of trial and error. Considering since there's a lot of running, you basically have to run through a select path to find out one little hole that gets you to the next area. There is some points in the game where you do have to do it classic style, where you have to creep around, trying to avoid the enemies. But most of the time, you're basically just running away from them. You're getting from point A to B, and that's pretty much it. And that's not fun, because this is pretty much most of the game. There is a few instances, there's a bit where you go onto a raft. That was alright. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot. It's not as scary too. It's intense, but it's not as scary. Well, the real world areas, like in the Arizona area with the crazy people, that wasn't really scary. That was just more like intense and just trying to get away from them. Really, you just don't want to meet the next bad guy. The school area, though, that's where the juice of the game is. That's this scary section. That is the bit that made me like really felt like I would shit myself. But luckily, and like that, yeah. It pretty much did. It was always terrifying to be in those areas, but they were short and sweet with the school sections. They didn't really last that long, to be honest. But yeah, that's pretty much where most of the scare and intense. That's pretty much where the scare from the first Outlast will be. But yeah, the graphics, they do look good. I mean, hell, when you look at a bucket of shit, it looks like a bucket of shit. So yeah, they definitely did very good on the graphics. The graphics are very good for such a small company like this, making AAA games look like shit sometimes. And this is and the sound effects are really good too. And I really like how the camera that you have this time also has a few extra bits. Like you have this microphone that'll help you like with your surroundings. So there was a few instances like where you're going through a cornfield and then it's like guys trying to find you, and this is where it's actually very useful. But other than that, it's not very necessary. There's a few points else where I did use it, but it's not something that's entirely necessary. Plus the batteries run out very quickly for this camera, considering how modern and up to date it is, which is really weird. But yeah. And this time as well, you have an inventory that you can look at. Like, in the first game, you just basically get like a bunch of batteries and that's it. This time, when you're having to see how much you have, and how much like stuff you have, like batteries and bandages, since you can now actually heal yourself in this game, since in the first game you just magically regenerate, this time you have to like heal yourself if you take too much damage, which at least is a little bit more realism to the game this time. When it comes to inventory too, like you have to like put down your camera and then look down in your pockets to see how many batteries and bandages you have. So that's pretty interesting. That was a pretty nice, neat addition to the mechanics where you actually like a bit more realistic. And it's like there's not really not much else when it comes to like the mechanics of your character, because it's pretty much just the same as the first Outlast, except this time you can like look down at yourself and see what there is, and you can look on the camera to like sort of see like the recordings and the documents that you have recorded, which is decent. Like you can relook at that stuff. But yeah, not really much else when it comes to mechanics. But I do like how the more over time, like, and this is again about the graphics, is that your character does look more and more like torn up. His clothes and stuff look more and more torn up over time. Like in the first Outlast, your guy looked fine, it looked really fine apart from losing his 2 fingers. This time you can actually see the damage the game is causing to your character over time. And I like that. I like how it shows like what all the like the rips in his clothes and stuff like that, all the wounds he's getting. So yeah, they definitely did a lot more with making your character looking like he's going through shit. Now, the enemies in this game aren't as frightening compared to the first Outlast game, nor are they not as prominent, because in the demo there was that evil witch lady that likes to use her axe to chop off your dick. She is not around for a lot of this game. She's around early on, but then she disappears completely throughout most of the game. And then she turns up literally right near the end and then dies. Just like the big guy in the first Outlast game. But at least the big guy was like, you know, pretty prominent throughout the game. Like he always turned up quite a lot. This, like, evil witch lady, she's just like around for the first couple of hours, then disappears completely, then shows up at the end. There's not really a prominent enemy in this game. It's like they just give you like this boss, this semi-boss to run away from, and then they give you this another one, and then they give you another one. Like, at least the main one, I think the main one is pretty much this weird monster that you see in the school area. It looks messed up, and it looks pretty terrifying if you did see it. But none of these felt like as terrifying as the ones from the first Outlast game, and that is disappointing too. And it's just the fact that they all pretty much end up getting killed off anyway. It's just, well, same with Outlast 1, but at least the deaths in this one for the enemies just didn't feel as, you know, good. They just felt like they just died. And some of the situations, like the characters, the characters in this game aren't really, you know, cool, well, good. Like, you don't really have much. The only reason you have for like supporting Blake is so he can rescue his wife, pretty much. But other than that, he's basically the same guy as his character. Basically, is the same as the one from the first Outlast game. Like, over time, you slowly start losing your mind from like the stuff that's around. But at least in this game, there's a reason, because apparently, like, everyone's under mind control, and your character is also slowly suffering from that mind control stuff as well. Which also comes in for the ending too, as there is a few things. But yeah, there's not really much reason to support Blake in the game. He's not really good, to be honest. He's just another guy that you play who's trying to go for a bunch of shit to get to his wife. And the objectives in this game too. At least in the first Outlast, there was a nice amount of objectives. Like retrieving, pressing buttons and stuff like. I mean, I know there was a lot of like retrieving and getting stuff, but in this game, like from like before even the halfway point, you have like one objective that's pretty much your primary objective for like most of the game, which is getting to the mine. Yes, there's a lot of stuff that happens in between, but your primary objective is to get to the mine, and that is your main objective for a good portion of the game, and that kind of sucks. It's like, there wasn't really much variety in objectives, and it's the same with like the level layout. Like, it is very linear, like I said before. There's not as many shortcuts and stuff, like to avoid your enemies, like a lot easier and stuff like that. It's just basically just go, just run, get the fuck out of there, and that's pretty much it. There is very little of the stuff that you see in the first Outlast that was good in this game, and that sucks. Like I said, barely any hiding at all. Most of it is just run away, that's pretty much it, or just look around. That is pretty much what most of the game is. And even the enemy's AI is a little bit, like, not as good in this game compared to the first one. There was bits where I saw, like, this, like, one enemy I encountered who was getting trapped on a bunch of twigs, and I was like, what the fuck are you doing? I had no idea, yeah, the program of the enemies is not as good in this game. But, yeah, there's, like, at least the places look good. Well, I think, I don't even know. Like, the Arizona areas didn't look as, like, it's frightening compared to the Insane Asylum. Like I said, the school area is the more scary area of the game, and that's pretty much where the meat of it is. And then, of course, you have the fucking ending. The ending is complete bullshit, and it doesn't make any sense. At least when the documents and the recordings make one little tiny difference, and it's not easily noticeable, I think. It just depends. You don't need all the recordings and documents, you just need a majority of them for the good ending. Yeah, there are two endings, but there's very little difference between the two. It's very stupid between the two. I mean, yeah, there's really no difference between the endings whatsoever, and you just end up feeling confused and have no idea what's going on, and you just know that there's probably going to be DLC. Just like in the first Outlast, that's probably going to explain all this shit, where you like play another character and then you have to do a bunch of things. But yeah, so there is some good moments in the game, like with some of the areas. Like hell, there's some moments where you get crucified and get buried in the ground. But it's surprising how the fuck Blake is able to get out of these situations is beyond me. And yeah, that raft moment was okay too, that was a bit intense. And there's even a moment where the fucking sky is raining blood. Yeah. But other than that, there's like, yeah, Outlast 2 is not done as well as Outlast. The first Outlast was very well done. It could have been a new beginning for horror games, where you have like a bunch of classic nostalgic, like a bit of like nostalgic elements, but along with some new elements. But Outlast 2 completely decides to just throw all that away and just become a run and gun game that just ends up being more of a pain in the ass to do. Since there is a lot of trial and error that comes from it, since you have no idea where the fuck you're going. But yeah, Outlast 2 is not as good as the first Outlast game. There's still some good stuff in there. It was enjoyable in some ways. I've seen far worse games than this, and it was still scary in some areas, especially in the school area. And it looked good, and the sound effects were good, but story-wise and the mechanics and the levels and stuff like that was not done as good. So overall, I'm gonna give Outlast 2 a 6 out of 10. So that is my review of Outlast 2. A disappointing game compared to the first game, but hopefully who knows what we're going to get in the DLC if that comes, and what we might get in the third Outlast game, if there is a third Outlast game. Hopefully we'll get a third Outlast game that will hopefully be a much better game, and will hopefully bring back the classic stuff that we got from the first Outlast. And hopefully then maybe things will be better, but until then we'll just have to see. So, hope you guys enjoyed this review. Leave a like down below, subscribe, comment on what you think is right or wrong with the game, and I shall see you guys in the next random video.